Welcome to CivilNet. My guest today is the executive producer of a very massive undertaking called East of Byzantium, William Martens. William, Bill, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
You have just wrapped up a 2-week shoot in Armenia for East of Byzantium, and I must confess that for the past number of years I've been hearing about it, reading about it, seeing it. It was quite confusing for me if this is an actual video game, if it's a movie, a documentary, a miniseries. What is it? And so that we lay the groundwork for our discussion here.
East of Byzantium is a graphic novel produced by Roger Kupelian. He's a visual effects artist, very well-known visual effects artist in Los Angeles, obviously Armenian. The graphic novel that he created, you know, it could end up being all of those things. In this incarnation, however, it's a documentary, and I'm the producer of that documentary.
Graphic novel, explain that to me.
It's basically, instead of a novel that tells a story just in words, this one is words with a lot of pictures, a lot of illustrations.
Right.
Yes.
So the illustrations tell the story aided by some text,
yes,
as opposed to the opposite, right?
It's like an adult comic book, but it's actually historically based, and you know.
Okay, and for our viewers who haven't heard about East of Byzantium, what is the time period? What is the time frame that you're actually bringing to a larger screen?
Well, this is a time period. The reason it's important to me as a documentary filmmaker is because it's a period in history that was pivotal, that actually kind of set the stage for how things would go in Europe and even in the Americas. If you look at what happened here, you know, I like to call it the real Middle Earth, you know, and I also like to say that this is like, on top of that, it's like, if you're familiar with the HBO series Game of Thrones, which is a very popular series in the United States.
I must admit I haven't watched it, but everybody in my life.
Okay, this is like the Game of Thrones except real. You know, you've got these incredible, these big noble houses, and all this fighting between these huge empires, the Eastern Roman Empire, the Persian Empire, and the Armenian Kingdom. And Armenia in this story is the buffer state between the two. And for Persia to pursue its ambitions, you know, in Anatolia and possibly even in Europe, they have to go through Armenia. And that didn't go very well for them. So they never really got beyond that, and they had to really be happy with their empire the way it was. But had Armenia not been in the way, you know, it's quite possible the Persian Empire would have grown enormous, you know, larger maybe even than the old Roman Empire. And, you know, if you look down the road, if the Persian Empire had spread all the way through Europe, you know, when Islam came about a few hundred years later, who knows? You know, Western Europe may have never been Christian, it may have been Islamic.
So you've become a real expert or aficionado in Armenian history and Persian and Roman history, it appears. So you came on with this project and you were in Armenia. In the last couple of days, there has been this huge discussion on social media that the production team of East of Byzantium had a lot of difficulties trying to film at the Garni Temple. Was this the case?
No.
Okay, so
no,
I mean,
well, look, for maybe to an outsider looking at what was going on at Garni, they might think that way, but as an American filmmaker, these are things that we're totally used to dealing with in historical sites, where we'll go to a site, we'll have permission to film there, but they still need to allow the tourists to do what they want to do. So it was basically up to us to do crowd control. You know, they didn't have the staff or the infrastructure to deal with the crowds, and it was really no big deal. I mean, we actually, I think people were entertained by the pagan water ceremony that we filmed there in front of the temple. You know, we did it. It was basically very similar to pagan ceremonies that took place in maybe 310 AD. And
the costumes and the setting and everything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing the end product. But before we get to that, the Golden Apricot Film Festival for the past 10 years in Armenia, I don't know if you're familiar with it, has been trying to bring Armenian cinema to a global audience, has been trying to encourage and develop Armenian filmmaking. And there are a number of films now that are being made just ahead of the 100th anniversary of the Armenian genocide. And there are a lot of film production companies coming to Armenia to try and figure out if the infrastructure exists, if there are the professionals, the cameramen, the photographers, the editors, and also sound stages and all the things that you guys need in your profession. How easy or how difficult or how complicated was it for your 2-week shoot here in Armenia?
It was actually very easy. Armin Kapelian, who is Roger's brother, was our production manager here, and in early conversations, he tried to convince me that, hey, it's actually pretty good here. People just don't know it, and so I took his word for it, and we came here, and I've been actually very, very pleasantly surprised with the level of talent that exists here. I think without an expert like Armin to help a production, film here, I can see how it'd be very complicated. And I think there are a lot of talented people here. I think there's a lot of incredible scenery and beautiful sites to shoot here. And I think if there was some kind of central film authority that could provide incentives for people to film here, kind of like we do in the United States. That's why there's been so much runaway production out of California to like Louisiana and South Carolina and Georgia, is because those states give incentives to filmmakers. They make it easy for them to film there. They make it affordable. They even give tax incentives. So I feel like if something like that were made available here through some kind of central film commission that, and people weren't penalized for filming here, I think a lot of people would film here because there's actually quite a bit of talent here. The director of photography I worked with and the other production assistants that who I worked with here, they were all terrific. I would put them up against a lot of people in the United States.
Yeah, I could imagine Armenia being attractive for its natural scenery, perhaps for its lower wages compared to other countries in Europe or in the region. So that could be an attraction for filmmaking production companies. Getting back to East of Byzantium, what is the final product going to be? Is it going to be what I thought it was going to be, a 2-hour movie, or is it going to be a miniseries? What is it?
Well, I mean, it could end up being all of those things, but the version of East of Byzantium that I'm producing is the documentary version. I was approached by Seda Melkoni, who's my fellow producer on this project, about 4.5 years ago. Presented this project. She knew I was a documentary filmmaker. I've done a lot of stuff for National Geographic and Discovery Channel. And she brought it to me, and it was a period in history a lot of Americans aren't familiar with. I think they should be. 90% of Americans, they may not go to church, but they identify as Christian. And this was really the beginning of Christianity. It wasn't the Catholic Church. So, this particular, what I'm doing is a documentary film, and it's going to be a 2-hour special. We may bump it up to 3 hours, and we'll be shopping it to the networks. When we get to a certain point of completion, probably at rough cut or fine cut, we'll shop it to the networks. And I'm sure that we'll get bids, and hopefully shortly after the first of the year, it will air in America and hopefully worldwide.
So you keep saying documentary, so I'm assuming that you've been working with scholars and experts, historians. History, the study of history can be quite subjective sometimes, depending on...
Well, history is written by the winners.
Whether it's from a Persian perspective or an Armenian perspective. How has that process played out?
Well, we're involved.
Who got final say on the script? I mean, it's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, well, I come in with no bias. Either way, I'm not here to glorify anyone's story or to debunk anyone's story. But we're involving, we have a Persian Zoroastrian expert, we have an Armenian cleric, we have a secularist, we have a Roman scholar. So we're involving all sides. And we're going to be, one of the storytelling devices is that we're going to have all of them, they're all going to get a chance to go at each other and present their perspective. Okay. And it's going to be a little bit of a boxing match, but the way we tell the story is going to be based on everyone's contribution and what is the likely scenario, what really happened, what is likely to have happened, because there's a lot of history that's not written. So We can infer things based on how we know that history is told, and also we know how certain people were during that time. We can look at artwork, we can look at the historical record, and sometimes artwork is more revealing than the historical record. And we can come to certain conclusions, and I think people have told told history the same way for since we've been telling history. So things haven't really changed that much.
It's going to be interesting to see the final, the end product. And just as a final question, what was the favorite spot for your filming shoot that you did here in Armenia? Where were some of the locations?
It's really tough to pick a favorite. I mean, we filmed some incredible stuff down in Goris, up in Ichivan. Garni obviously is a beautiful spot. I don't know. I mean, there's scenery here that is so exotic and so beautiful.
Yeah, for such a small country, right?
Yeah, it's incredible. So I think I'm going to have to get back to Los Angeles and really
send me a note.
really just kind of I have to digest my experience here. It's really too early to pick up.
It's been intense, I'm sure, too, in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, we had an ambitious schedule, but we fulfilled it.
Very good, very good. Well, William Martens, thank you very much, and the best of luck in this long process ahead, because the post-production and editing and sound and all of that, I'm sure is going to take a lot of time and energy.
It takes a while.
Thank you very much. I'd like to remind our viewers that my guest today was the executive producer of East of Byzantium, William Martens. Stay with CivilNet.